Hey guys, I'm Brian.
And I'm Terry.
Welcome back to the Forest Farm Project. As you can see, we have concrete behind us. Finally!
It's about time.
Something actually happened out here other than cutting trees and moving dirt.
Yeah, it's construction. Putting the rebar in was the first major building something.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that video, you can check the link right up here.
Yeah, and while we did that, we went around and just, if you hadn't seen, we drove stakes. They were 20 inches long.
Yeah.
We wanted about 8 inches. Some of the holes were a little deeper, so sometimes it got deeper. Set them with a transit, tapped them down until they were all the exact same level, unless there was a step up for
bulkheads,
which we'll show you in a minute. But we drove this half-inch rebar, and then we took a rake, and just your standard garden rake, and we literally just took it and tamped down on the concrete and bounced it around as they were pouring it out. And you'll see in the video in a little bit. And Brian was running the hose, which was a major job. That thing's pretty stout.
It's all a lot of work, and he was tamping for hours.
Yeah, we've got 2 houses here, plus the pillars.
We had over 600
porches.
feet of footer run, and then all the pillars.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Yeah.
So in that light, anyway, we'd tap it down, and we spray painted everywhere where one of these pins were. So we would tap down until we hit that pin.
Yeah.
And then we'd know, okay, that's the proper level of concrete, because you want to keep it as level as possible for the brick block mason, so that he can come up without having to do too much work, because the more work he has to do, the more he's going to charge you. If he has to cut every block or every other block and it's all crooked,
or do a bunch of grinding out here to get the concrete low enough for it.
Well, he'll just fill it full of mortar and whatnot. But either way, he's going to charge you for that. So the more you can get this right on the initial laying of this footer, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, we go down to this, and we had these on every corner and every crossroad, and then
no more than every 6 feet.
Right.
Between 5 and 6 feet, depending on what our layout was allowed.
Yeah, roughly. Some of them were around 5. Yeah. But anyway, then you could kind of eyeball between them, and I mean, it's pretty simple. We didn't have a transit on it. We laid these pins. Yeah, we laid these pins with a transit. But then when we came back and was pouring this concrete, it was all the 2 of us could do.
We had our buddy Charles come out and help us get started, because he is a builder, and he just gave us a few quick tips as we went on my house.
And told us, don't be so picky, because it's concrete. You're not going to get it perfect, because we're very picky. We want everything exactly right. Right. You can't do that on this.
A lot of guys said, hey, take a transit out there and check it every little ways. We didn't have time for that. One big thing we had happen was we told them we wanted 4 trucks on a 40+ yard order, which means we know we need 40 yards, possibly more. And we told them we wanted on a 30-minute rotation, so that every 30 minutes we had a new truck here. Well, into the first truck, he says, well, got to go, I'll wash the truck out, I'll go get your next load, and I'll be back.
And we're like, wait a minute. They told us we're going to get a load every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So we called the guy up, and he's like, well, we got busy, and we got some big jobs going, so all our trucks are tied up over there. I said, you didn't tell us that. Well, it just happened. I said, well, then you should have told us, hey, we're not going to be able to do what you need. You don't want your concrete drying and setting before the other round gets here.
No.
And you got about an hour and a half max to do any work to it. And you don't want to wait that long to have those joints made where they stop and then start pouring again.
Yeah.
30 minutes is okay. It's still pretty wet.
It was about 45 minutes round trip for him to get concrete and get back here. So we had a little downtime.
And then they fixed it, and we only needed 4 trucks.
They had more trucks to get back in by the time he was finishing that. So we had we had 3 trucks back to back to back after that.
But he dedicated a couple to us to get us done and get us finished, so we didn't have a problem.
So it worked out, but it was aggravating, to say the least.
Just a little bit.
Standing there waiting, because we're paying a pump truck to be here that couldn't pump any concrete.
Right, so if he sits here we had 4 hours. Yeah. If we'd had to wait an hour or more, it was going to be 6 or more hours. We'd had to pay him hundreds more dollars.
Yeah, it's $135 an hour for each additional hour after that 4 hours, so it adds up real quick.
Right. So they fixed it. But then they did good. They were good.
Yeah, it did a great job, and it was very fluid, and it's very easy to get going too fast with that, so you've got to watch. I would get too far ahead of him, and he couldn't keep up, especially Charles had to leave after the first house. He had things he had to do, so it was just Dad and I on the second house.
Yeah, he just came to get us started, and we're like, Charles, we've never done this. I know we can do it, but we want to make sure we don't mess up initially, because this is the start of your house. You want this right. If this isn't right, you've got problems. If this sinks, your whole house is going to sink.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
So we got rolling, and it was pretty fluid after that. We got a good rhythm going, and it worked out really well.
It didn't take, but I mean, literally minutes, and we knew what we were doing. We were very not confident, just because we'd never done it.
It's unknown territory.
Yeah, but nothing. It was a breeze.
Yeah, so let's show you a few of the things we figured out before we got started, and then we'll let you see the video. That way you understand what we're doing in the time lapse. There's no way on earth we could film this process because
we were far too busy.
We were running nonstop the entire time except for waiting for the concrete to come back that second time. So we just ran a time lapse for you guys. That's all we could do. We
had 2 different rakes out here. This is more of a commercial grade rake, or like a landscaper would use. This is a typical, little bit less expensive wooden handled rake that you'd have around your house. You can see the red one here is far smaller in width, and the teeth are much bigger on the black one. The whole area is just a whole lot more area. Well, I wasn't thinking about the surface area of this, and when I was trying to work that concrete, you're kind of trying to push the rocks down if they're sticking up any, and you're leveling it out and you're dragging it back and forth between them pins, and you're finding the pins with the rake and making sure that you're level and getting it as close as you can by eyeballing it. That black rake probably took twice the effort to work into that concrete and move it around because it's so much bigger surface area, and I didn't realize that. And had I had a chance to do it over, I believe I would work with this red rake some, because it's smaller and would have been easier. If you're a big, strong dude and you're out here working like this all the time, you'd probably want the biggest one you can get a hold of. If you're not used to it, your arms are going to get tired, your shoulders are going to get tired, your legs are going to get tired, your back's going to get tired. You might want to be moving smaller amounts. So something to think about. So here, the ground level steps down. So we had to step the concrete down. There'll be an extra block here, and then it'll step up to here. So this is called a bulkhead right here. And basically, when you come in, the first thing you want to do when you start pouring your concrete is figure out where are we going to run from. You want to start at your lowest point and then travel over to the bulkheads and go up, travel over to the next one and go up. But fill your lowest points first and make your way up, because concrete is basically very thick, but it's a liquid. So it's going to try to slide downhill. If you filled it up there first and made it to this bulkhead, it's going to push out of that bottom and roll. And with that same thought in mind, you don't want it pushing out of there when you step up here and move on. So before you pour all this or that, you want to come over to the bulkheads and pour concrete out in front of it and let it run under that bulkhead, and then fill in back there to the level of the bottom of that board. This board is 8 inches, just like an 8-inch block. Here's the bottom, and then it steps up 8 inches for the bottom of the next level of block. That way, when you come across the top here, these two should line up right across the top. If not, they're going to have to cut block. They're going to charge you more if they got to cut block. So you want to try and get that right when you're doing it. But if you pour concrete up here and go that way, the weight is going to push down and it's going to ooze out. So you want to pour it down here, fill that whole bulkhead area up to the bottom of this board, and then let that set and move on to the other bulkheads and get all them set up. And then start pouring all the rest of your footer at the lowest points. And then by that time, this has had some time to set up. So hopefully, when you do have to come back and pour this, it doesn't push its way through and come up. I saw in one of mine, it did push up some, even after we'd let it set. So we're just going to have to chisel some of the concrete off, or they're going to have to cut a block off, one of the two. I guess we'll let them cut the block.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind with your bulkheads, I don't think we've mentioned it in the previous videos, these have to be 8-inch increments, because block is 8 inches. So it'd be 8, 16, 24. You cannot have more than a 2-foot bulkhead. So if you had 4 feet of rise, you've got to come up 2 feet, go over a couple feet, and then come up another 2 feet. You can't do it all in one spot.
Right.
Alrighty.
And then big bulkheads, you really have some downward pressure on that concrete.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on that.
You got to make sure you fill the bottom first.
And fill it out enough that you've got a good back pressure there that it's not just going to wash out.
Right, and you're hoping that this sets up enough before you pour up here so that it doesn't push out.
Yeah, so you want to do those right away, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So when you're pouring these bulkheads, initially trying to get this concrete set up, pour it in here, and then you take your rake. If you just kind of hook it under this bulkhead here, then you know you're at the right height roughly, and then you work it back and try and keep it level, and maybe put a pin close to here so you got the right depth out in here, which we had one right here. In hindsight, I probably would have come back a couple feet. That way, this is already telling me I'm at the right level over here. So why not have it a couple feet away so I can get a good level surface way out here? Hindsight, you know, we put them up close. We weren't professionals at this. We didn't know exactly what we're doing. We've learned a lot.
We got the job done.
Yeah. Another thing is, when you're standing there working this rake, you know, you kind of wobble it around, and this mud it's wet. It's mud, basically, wet mud.
Yeah.
So it literally moves up and down as you take your rake and do this,
it's
hitting
like a gel.
Yeah, it's just wobbling around. And that helps it fill any little holes around the sides, like there might be some air pockets or something.
Yeah.
We had rebar. It helps it settle around that rebar and grab it. And then it helps you level it out. And then when you say, okay, I'm from here to this pin, it doesn't look level, I'm a little high here, you just grab some of that and throw it on further down and just keep working it towards whatever direction you're going with the concrete. Or if you see I don't have enough, you just reach out there and start grabbing some and pulling it back, and I'd holler at Brian, hey, I need more concrete.
Or I'd swing the hose his direction and do big swings, so you're not just dumping a ton of concrete.
In one spot, yeah.
Do a little bit, do a little bit. And another thing is, you want to take that rake as you're working along and plunge it down into the concrete and work that gravel lower in there. You don't want all the gravel at the top.
Right, you just kind of bouncing it around. And we noticed one thing, we had a lot of settling out here. We're not experts at it. We should have stuck around a little longer and kept an eye on it and maybe brought our transit out here. We didn't use the transit while we put it down. We didn't have time, like he said earlier.
We're just running wide open.
Running, yeah.
And it settled, because it was so wet, it settled around a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 in some places on mine. So
right.
It's something to bear in mind. If it's really wet, it will settle. But with it being really wet, we had more time to work the concrete because it was just the two of us. We were slower at this than normal. So.
And if you have one of these pump trucks, boom truck, whatever type it is, pumping concrete like that, they're going to, there's what they call a slump. We had a 5-inch slump requested. They ended up going a little over that.
It was around a 6-inch.
Right, which is no, I think it was a 4-inch. 5-inch slump means they'll put it in this container, put it in there, and fill the container up, and they pull the container away. How much does it sag before it stops sagging? Mm-hmm. We said 5-inch because that's what a good buddy of ours who does commercial concrete for a living all his life, or has done all his life, he said get 5-inch. They did, he said 6, but the other guy said 4. And I think the 4 was the accurate number because if it's wetter, it's going to sink further down. If it was too wet, it'd just flatten out. You don't want that.
No.
So you need to do a little research, talk to somebody around your area, make sure you're getting the right slump, because they're going to tend to want to make it as liquid as possible. That's easier on their truck because it's got these big hydraulic cylinders pumping that concrete. The more liquid it is, the easier it is to push, and less chance it's going to set up in their lines or start setting up to where they really got to push hard and it's hard on their machinery. So they're going to go for the lowest, the most liquid concrete they can get. So you got to make sure you request what slump you want. I mean, I think that's important. Talk to somebody that knows. We're not experts. 5-inch is what he told us. I think that was good.
One thing to take note of is how fast your pump operator is moving. You know, on my house, we were flowing nice and smooth. Everything was working out great. And then we had that concrete truck issue with them having to go get another load, so that set us behind. Well, on my house, we were early in the 4-hour period. When we got to Dad's, we were on the tail end of it.
And he needed to go do another job. And it wasn't our fault they were behind.
No.
And he's running remote control. That's all he's doing is standing there running remote control. He can slow up, stop, pump it slow for you, whatever you need. Up here, Brian was getting it just smooth and level, and I hardly had any work to do. I still had to go through and make sure everything was settled out good.
Yeah.
But very little dragging concrete around. By the time we got down there, I was working my tail off trying to keep up.
He was running it hard and fast,
and we kept saying,
get out of there.
Slow up.
And I was just trying to keep everything fluid as I could in the hole and keep it as level as I could. And by the time I could get him to stop, we're 20 feet ahead of Dad, and he's trying to catch up. And as soon as Dad would get to us, he'd take off again.
Yeah, and you got to process information in your head. You're looking, you're saying, does this look level? That don't look good. I got to move some concrete around. He was processing like that as well. He's running that hose, and he's looking back and saying, oh, it's looking pretty level. I need to move on. That's getting pretty full and level. I need to move on. Mm-hmm. But when that guy's just pumping it out there, Brian's, you know, he's just trying to just keep up with the pump and not even look at how level things are.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep it somewhat fluid.
Yeah, you're in control of that guy. He's here for you. Tell him, slow it down, stop, give me a minute. You know, you want to slow it down? I'm a rookie. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Speaking of manual labor, let's get to that video.
All right.
Hope you guys enjoy this time lapse. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the time lapse. It was definitely a lot of work, but a lot of fun. We learned a lot doing it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And next up's block work.
Yeah, and we should have time to be able to film this on like doing the footers here.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be laying it, not us.
Yeah, we're not laying the blocks, so
Yeah.
we should be able to get some good footage for you. Then after that, it's on to framing, and we're going to be rocking and rolling, guys. It's really, well, not after that. We're actually going to be doing foundation sealing and installing the drains. So
exactly.
We'll be able to film that good for you, too.
Yeah, I think we could lay the block, but we're not going to chance it on these houses.
No, and the time it would take us, it's worth the money to have somebody else lay them.
Yeah,
because it would take us so much longer, especially with our schedule the way it is right now. It's more practical to do that so we can get to framing before it gets into deep winter.
That's where we want to really start putting our efforts in. This and,
yeah.
All the way up through except for the sheetrock.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely a process that's going to take a while, a lot of work, but it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, man, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, give us a big thumbs up for a like. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Have a good one, guys.
See you next time.